So good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening as we discuss ways to help students thrive during these unprecedented, stressful times. My name is Aaron Bizak, and I'm the Chief External Affairs Officer for Tri-City Medical Center in Oceanside. And I also serve as the President of the North Coastal Prevention Coalition, serving the cities of Carlsbad, Oceanside, and Vista. This forum is sponsored by Vista Unified School District and is modeled after a very successful in-person forum held back in October 2019 at the Vista Civic Center before all this craziness began with the pandemic. We understand that screen overload is real, so we're keeping this event to just 1 hour. And our goal for this hour is to share the latest trends in youth substance abuse, and just let you know it's not all bad news, build an understanding about the most common mental health issues facing students, help inspire positive choices in 2021, share available resources for students and families, and draw some lucky winners at the end from those who completed the survey. And again, if you have not completed the survey, there's still time. We will keep it open until 5:30, so just about another 22 minutes. It includes some quiz type questions, some opinions, and is also how you enter your name for our drawing in. Parents and students can each complete the survey, and you can find the link in the chat box, and you can also scan the QR code up on your screen using your cell phone. Some of the questions help set the stage for our discussion tonight. For example, our brains continue developing until about age 25. Alcohol and marijuana are the most common substances used by teens, but most teens do not use. And so we like to show you our one lifetime use graph, and you can kind of see it here. You can see the trends in youth substance use. And family and friends are actually the most common ways that teens report getting substances. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to share a brief 4-minute video from the Addiction Policy Forum that helps summarize in a very clear way simple but important steps all families can take. Though it's focused on preventing substance use, the steps are important for supporting good mental health as well. So let's watch that video now.
As parents, it's our job to protect our kids and keep them safe. 90% of Americans with a substance use disorder began using substances before the age of 18. Here are 10 things you can do to help keep your kids safe from addiction. 1. Talk early and often. Talk early and often with your kids about the risks of using alcohol and drugs. This isn't a one-time chat, but an ongoing conversation that will change over time. Talking about addiction can be hard. Take some time to think about your own relationship to substances and whether your family has a history of addiction. If you have a drink in front of your kids, that's an opportunity to explain the differences between adult and adolescent brains and why it is so important for them to delay substance use until their brain is fully developed. 2. Support healthy activities. 2 important protective factors for kids are engaging with positive activities and feeling like they belong in a healthy community. 3. Set clear expectations. A critical element in preventing the development of a substance use disorder is delaying the age of first use while the adolescent brain is still developing. Make clear to your kids that they are not to use any substance until their 20s. 4. Establish consequences. Be clear and consistent about what the consequences of substance use would entail for your child. 5. It's not your job to be cool. Our kids don't need us to be their buddy. They need parents to guide and support them safely into adulthood. 6. Don't provide alcohol or drugs to your teens. We might think that teens will be safer drinking if we are there to monitor them. But parents supplying alcohol to their teens increases adolescent alcohol use and other unsafe behaviors. Teen drinking is not inevitable. Don't host no access to substances at home, and remind other parents that substance use is dangerous for the adolescents, no matter where it happens. 7. Pay attention. Stay involved in your kids' lives even as they become more independent. Build relationships with their friends' parents and keep each other up to date about where your kids are and what they are doing. Tell other parents that your kid is not to use substances under any circumstance and ask about their house rules. 8. Make time for your child. As you nurture your child's passions outside of the home, Don't forget to carve out time for family. Quality time with loved ones has a lasting positive impact on kids. And building a healthy relationship with your child now makes it more likely that if they begin to struggle, they'll feel comfortable coming to you for help. 9. Prioritize sleep. Getting a good night's sleep is critical for mental and physical health, especially during adolescence. Make sleep a priority in your household. Over time, a lack of sleep can lead to serious health conditions and increase a person's risk for addiction. 10. Intervene early. If you think that your kid may be struggling with substance use, don't wait to get help. Science tells us that the earlier a person is treated for a substance use disorder, the better their outcomes, and that treatment works even if a patient isn't feeling ready. Worried about your substance use or that of a loved one? Call 833-301-HELP for free, compassionate, and confidential support. Together, we can solve this. Join us.
I think that was a very good video. We're going to make the link available in the chat box if you want to grab that and share it on social media. I think it's a good thing to send to our friends and families and make sure that they know these 10 simple steps to focus on preventing youth substance abuse. So we're going to move forward now, and I'd like to apologize before I introduce these speakers if I completely butcher your names, but I'm going to hope that I don't. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Greta Meyerhoff is a licensed marriage and family therapist with Vista Community Clinic's Behavioral Health Department. Tonight, we'll be asking her questions about adolescent mental health with a focus on anxiety, the most common mental health diagnosis among teens, but also one that's often misunderstood. And Dr. Bradley McCamick, a pediatrician with Vista Community Clinic, addressing all aspects of healthy childhood development. Tonight, we're asking his expertise specifically about adolescence, since that brings unique opportunities and challenges. If you have questions, please type them in the question and answer or the chat box, and we'll address all that we can. So here's my introductory question for Greta Meyerhoff. Thank you again for joining us this evening. The COVID pandemic has brought changes to all of our lives, some more than others, but all students have faced significant challenges with school closures and remote learning. Can you help us understand the difference between normal feelings of stress and anxiety and more serious impacts when help might be needed?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Very happy to be part of this and share some information. I hope that will be helpful. So when we think about anxiety, I'd like to start with maybe giving you a little example of what
Me gusta empezar con un ejemplo de lo que es buen estrés y mal estrés.
good stress, a certain level of pressure on us. It can propel us to be motivated and accomplish tasks. It can, push us into action. I had good stress when I found out yesterday afternoon that I was presenting today, and that propelled me to get into action. So when we have levels of stress that impair us, we can start to feel anxious. And I would say that when anxiety becomes a problem, it's when we have an elevated level of anxiety over time that remains consistent. It's just this buzz that continues, and there are symptoms that come along with it. So when we have a higher level of anxiety over time, which certainly I think a lot of families have experienced so much stress and anxiety due to the pandemic and all the changes that we've experienced this last year, it can begin to impair our ability to learn. It can get in the way of students' concentration. So I'm going to go over what are emotional symptoms of anxiety and what are physical symptoms of anxiety. And I'm going to do a brief run through on all the different kinds of anxiety. So emotionally, when we have anxiety that's consistent over time, we can experience feelings of apprehension. We can feel dread. We can feel like, oh my gosh, something bad is going to happen. It's sort of like a cloud that we carry around with us, that there's something bad that's going to happen to me. We can feel tense. We can feel tension in our neck and our shoulders. We may be startled easily. We can feel restless. I think particularly true in teens, we can have a high level of irritability when we're experiencing anxiety. As far as physical symptoms of anxiety, we may notice that our heart is racing. We may experience a shortness of breath. We might notice that our palms are sweaty. We might, break out in perspiration. We may have more headaches, fatigue, and we may have trouble sleeping. I'm sure this can happen to a lot of you, where the thoughts at night just go and go and go, and you can't turn them off, and it's very hard to fall asleep. So we might have insomnia. We can experience an upset stomach. We might find that we need to go to the bathroom more frequently when we're anxious. So physically, all of these symptoms are part of anxiety. There is a generalized anxiety, which is a chronic, exaggerated worrying about everyday life. And this worrying can consume our whole day and make it hard to concentrate, as I mentioned earlier. There's another kind of anxiety called social anxiety, and that is where we may think irrationally, people are going to judge me. I don't want to say anything because I might embarrass myself. As students, we may not join conversations or contribute, even though we may have very good information to contribute, but we're too anxious to join in. There's also something called panic disorder, which really describes a series of panic attacks. And panic attacks hold many of those symptoms I was just talking about earlier. But sometimes we may think that we're actually dying, have a shortness of breath. A certain percentage of patients show up in the ER thinking they're having heart attacks when they're actually having a panic disorder. One more type of anxiety, which is a little more rare, is developing phobias. And a phobia is an irrational fear to certain places, events, or objects, where we have this very powerful emotional reaction to something that is, it doesn't make sense. The causes of anxiety are a mixture of genetics. They say anxiety can run in the family. If you have an anxious parent, you may be higher than average, that you may have anxiety yourself. And then there's environment, which, we talked about the pandemic. Other events can bring up anxiety disorder, experiencing abuse, death of a loved one, experiencing violence, or prolonged illness can all result in developing anxiety. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. Thank you, Greta. That's very good information, and we'll come back to you in just a little bit. Next up, Dr. McCamick. Those of us at NCPC are encouraged that teen substance use has been going down. In fact, less than 20% of 11th graders in Vista Unified reported using any substances in the past month. And that is according to the last Healthy Kids Survey, California Healthy Kids Survey data that we have. But we're also very concerned that marijuana is the one substance where use is remaining steady or increasing. Many people, including students, believe that it can be helpful for them, particularly to treat anxiety. Can you help us understand why the adolescent brain is particularly at risk from any substance use?
Absolutely. And once again, I'm very grateful to be part of this, and I'm very happy to be able to participate in this forum. So I'm a pediatrician. I work with kids from 0 to sometimes they stick around until 19 or 20. But so I work with a lot of adolescents, and one of the main topics we talk about when they come in for their regular checkups, and sometimes even randomly if they come in for knee pain or a rash, is mental health. And pretty much intertwined with that is substance use, and questions about substance use. So the reason, and this is what I try to explain to my patients and parents and as many people as will listen to me, is the adolescent brain is changing and pruning. Pathways in the brain are being built and broken every day. We all, the adolescents need a lot more sleep than adults. A big part of that is their brain. Their brain is changing every day. It needs more time to reprogram, to establish very important connections that have to do with routines and habits, and have a lot to do with their personality. Things like patience and memory. So because of that very critical critical remodeling, their brains are particularly susceptible, like sponges, to substances. Alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, other substances can really get in there and really affect the way that these connections are made. One particularly concerning fact, but that's been proven by studies, is that teens or adolescents that regularly use any substance during their brain development will go on to be adults that are a lot more likely to develop substance use disorders, not even particularly with that substance that they used as an adolescent. So, that kind of speaks to, using marijuana regularly as a teen or adolescent, or even into young adulthood, will make it a little bit more likely that people will use regularly other substances when they get older, whether that's alcohol or other, more illicit drugs that are a little bit more, that are very concerning as well. So long-term health effects that I kind of describe, or the health effects that I describe to teens and their parents regarding substance use. There's the long-term effects that I mentioned that come from regular use and regular exposure. The other more immediate health effects that we can see for our patients have to do with risky, impulsiveness and risky behaviors. We know that substances can reduce our inhibitions, meaning we're more likely to make rash decisions, do things that we normally wouldn't do. We know that teens tend to have that characteristic anyway. It's very natural at that age, and it's very appropriate to assert independence and for confidence to be kind of boosted and to think, to be making decisions on their own. And that can lead to impulsive decisions that that normally, we as adults look at our children and we might say, was that the best decision to make? Was that wise? But, as a parent, one of our jobs is to make sure our children are safe, but also let them make decisions for themselves and maybe make some mistakes here and there to learn. But the impulsiveness and that inhibition, that thought process is even more suppressed or pushed down when the brain is affected by some of these substances. And so that's why we get more more accidents, in addition to being physically impaired in terms of coordination, but also the decisions that people make tend to be less thought out and more impulsive if people are on substances like marijuana or alcohol or other substances. So physical injuries, criminal, activity in terms of making decisions that normally we would have that voice in our head telling us not to do that. They are more likely to happen if we're altered. So the long-term effects of the substances on the brain, the short-term effects on that impulsivity and making rash decisions, those are two very real health risks to especially to the adolescent patients that we have. So I think that's kind of my intro to my passion for substance use and why it is so important to address in everybody, but especially our adolescent patients.
Thank you, Dr. McCamick. That was great. I have a follow-up question for Greta. As we continue to learn more about brain development, as Dr. McCamick was talking about, and promoting mental health, what key things would you want every student and parent to walk away with tonight?
Um, I'm thinking back to the video that we viewed and how important it is to keep those conversations going with your child. And I also want to really encourage parents, your self-care, um, taking care of yourself. Um, there were some really wonderful examples in that video that require commitment and follow through. Um, so, making a commitment to find time for yourself every day to connect with a friend, making a commitment with yourself to get outside and have some sunlight every day, go for a walk every day. Um, Practicing positive communication. Uh, with family members, for example, rather than telling someone, just get over it, just snap out of it. If family members having difficulty with anxiety or depression, it's having a conversation with family members when you're all calm. And even maybe scheduling time every week to have a family meeting when you're all calm to best understand the situation. Reaching out for help early is really important when we're talking about either substance use disorder or mental health. Being aware of the early warning signs. There are many resources available to families. There are also hotlines, and there are even resources where you can text. Be patient. Sometimes it may take several calls to that resource. Have perseverance. Not all resources may be the best fit for your family, but there is help out there. And I'd like to mention that Vista Community Clinic, we have a behavioral health department. We do offer therapy for teens and families. I'm one of the drug and alcohol therapists there. I treat mostly adults, but we do have therapy services available to the community. So I really encourage anyone who's needing help to call us.
Very good. Thank you, Greta. And the same question to you, Dr. McCamick. So, what key things would you want every student and parent to walk away with tonight?
So, before I started my training, I was a little intimidated by caring for adolescents because they're the social, behavioral health issues that surrounded that age group just seemed very complicated. And that part I was not wrong about. It is very complicated. It is extremely difficult. I have two young boys, well before teenagers, 5 and 7, but looking at our friends that have older children and my nephew and niece who are approaching teenage years, I know how challenging it can be. So the thing that I think I try to really, really ingrain in all my parents of teens and teens themselves is that whenever I am approaching a patient that is using substances regularly, it is, for me, I always approach it as a result or a form of medication that they're trying for another primary mental health condition. It's extremely rare that I've come across a patient or an adolescent that regularly uses marijuana, for example, or drinks regularly just for the fun of it. It's almost always as a result of, I'm trying to relieve some anxiety. I'm trying to relieve this stress. I want to feel better. And it's so heartbreaking. I can't say that it's happened more than once or twice in my 7 years here where a patient will just say, I like the way it makes me feel. And that's it. It's almost always linked to some kind of underlying anxiety or depression or trauma. And I think we absolutely need to address that trauma has so much more of an effect than we used to think. And we're finally coming around on it. And there's surveys and questions that are addressed and geared towards asking about trauma. And not just, a single event that's happened to somebody, but regular ongoing trauma, stress related to a patient's environment, or a parent or caregiver that in a household that is that's potentially abusive, or just being in a a household that even doesn't show support or where it provides a patient safety. All those can be forms of trauma, and we know that trauma greatly increases people's likelihood that they will develop or have symptoms of anxiety, depression, and substance use might be their form of treatment, their form of medication for themselves. So every time I have a patient who's using, I'm trying to pound in, I turn to the parent immediately and say, and I'm trying to get ahead of them, because I don't want them to think that the primary problem is drug use. I don't want them to think that the primary problem is substance use. It's anxiety, it's depression, it's trauma, it's all these things. And if we address those things, we are going to have a much better time, much easier time addressing the substance use, which absolutely is a problem. Substance use is a problem. I want it to stop. It's not an effective treatment. It doesn't help. It's not a long-term treatment for anything that we know of in adolescence at this point. So I never, ever will recommend marijuana or drinking or drugs, but it's not the primary problem. We have to address the primary problem first before we can convince anybody to stop using, because they are using it. And most kids, when I get them alone, they want to stop too. One of their goals is to stop. And it's heartbreaking because they're sitting there, they want to stop, and they feel guilty about using, and it causes them to feel worse, more anxious, more depressed. And then, it's a cycle that's really hard to get out of. So that's my long-winded way of saying that one thing I want people to understand is that it's so linked to mental health, and that the primary problem is not the substance use, but something else. I wanted to reiterate a couple things from the video. It sounds cheesy, but if you know, or even if you don't know, like if you're a adolescent and you might find yourself in a situation where you're offered something, where you're in a house or with some friends, and they may offer you something. It may sound cheesy, but having a canned response, like I will jokingly tell my patients, like, just tell them that it gives you really bad diarrhea, and like nobody will push that on you if you say that gives you bad diarrhea. Like they'll be like, cool, don't ever do that then, because that's disgusting. Make it completely over the top. Say I'm allergic and like I tried it once and I almost died. It's lie about it. I don't care. Like make up something and just say whatever it is, or don't lie, or be honest and say I don't want to do that, and like I learned that it's bad for my brain and I don't want to do it. And so come up with a response. You don't want to be caught off guard if you're offered something. And it sounds cheesy, but I have done this for many different things in my life. And when I've had a canned response, a practiced response, it goes up so much more smoothly. And that goes for parents too, when you're having conversations with your kids, which brings me to my next point that the video made that I completely 100% agree with, is talk early and often with your kids about these things. And the thing that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and makes me really anxious about my own kids, if I'm not talking to them about this stuff, who is? Who are they hearing this from? If it's not me, it's going to be their friends who are the same age as them. That's horrifying to think about, the only people that are going to talk to them about drugs. And I'd have this talk with my patients about relationships and sex and safety. If the only source of their information is their friends, that is not okay, because I know that I know more than teenagers about drugs and sex and the risks. So, and I know most parents will as well. It's not just that I'm a doctor, it's that I've been alive longer and I've thought about it with an adult brain, not an adolescent brain. So it's really important to talk early and often about these things. And I see a question in the chat here: at what age do you recommend talking to our kids about drugs? Like, I talked to my 7-year-old about drinking, we, and smoking. I had a conversation with him a few days ago about cigarettes. And we see people vaping if we're walking down the street or driving. And if we're we're having a gathering, like there are people that are drinking, and he asks, and he knows, like, this is we call it a mommy daddy drink. Like, this is a mommy daddy drink. Like, it is not for kids, and it can make you feel really bad, and your brain is different than ours. So we are already talking to them about it. When they enter middle school, I will absolutely start having more regular conversations about, asking them directly, is anyone at school talking about this? Are you around this? Has anyone of your friends said that they've done this? In a way that's not, I don't want them to think they're going to get in trouble. I genuinely want to know how normal this kind of conversation is for them at school, because if it is, I want to start having, I want to make sure that I'm able to counter anything that they're hearing about it at school. And so early and often absolutely is going to be so important. And it might seem strange, but there's no age too young. Obviously the language and the words you use is going to change as they grow, and how in-depth and involved and what kind of risks you're going to talk about. But it's so important. We don't want to make any subject off limits, because it's just going to be it's going to be really easy to keep avoiding that topic as you move forward. Those are probably the most important things. Sleep is absolutely critical too. And I know a lot of my adolescents do not sleep enough. And that can exacerbate or make worse any mental health troubles as well. So getting adequate sleep, having, a concrete sleep time, getting electronics out of the room, so they can sleep without, looking at screens or falling asleep to a screen. That's going to be, that would probably be one of the biggest changes I can make, like concrete changes I could make for mental health.
Thank you very much, Dr. McCamick. Thank you very much, Greta. We're going to move into the audience question and answer section. I know that some folks have put questions in the chat box. You can feel free to do that, or you can also raise your hand. But thank you both again. We know that we've just touched the surface of these important issues. We'd like to allow a little time for the questions from the audience. If you have a question, like I said, you could type it into the chat box, or you can raise your hand to be called on. How does one know if they need medication for anxiety? Dr. McCamick or Greta?
Yeah, so I do have a number of patients who are on medication for anxiety. And I think I want to reiterate something that Greta had said earlier, is that anxiousness is not the enemy. Like, we have emotions: anxiousness, fear, frustration, happiness. All these are normal emotions that people are supposed to feel from day to day. They're healthy, but when it crosses over into kind of the inability to stop feeling that emotion, or when that emotion is really sensitive, so little things can trigger it and it becomes distressing physically and mentally, that's when we know it kind of crosses over. Now, the kind of the line where we decide, does this person, need therapy or kind of other interventions, counseling on self-care. Meditation is a huge thing I've been pushing a lot lately and trying to walk people through on how to start meditation, not medication, but meditation. If we're kind of at a zone where a patient isn't in an urgent situation, they're not feeling totally overwhelmed, but they're affected by their symptoms, we sometimes will start with that. And then, I'll have follow-ups every few weeks really check in, and if we're, not making progress, and if they're really, putting a good effort forth, or if they're unable to put a good effort forth because of their symptoms, so they aren't able to stick with, meditation, for example, or self-care, or counseling isn't as effective as they would hope, then we would talk about medication. And there are various medications available for younger patients, adolescents, even younger than adolescents in some cases. And we always use approved medications. We always, whenever I'm uncomfortable, I seek guidance from adolescent psychiatrists who've done their entire training, and with kids. Yeah, and that's something that's a conversation for me, or for someone, Greta, or other mental health professionals, like with your primary care doctor or with mental health professionals. It's very individualized. It depends on your goals, where you're at, how, where you're trying to be. So, so it's a very individualized conversation, but I'm always trying to have that conversation with people, whether or not it's right for them. And for some people I say, I don't think it's right for you, but for other people I do. And we kind of move forward from there.
Very good. We have a couple more questions in the chat box. How should one approach someone dealing with anxiety or being depressed? How can one comfort them? Greta, do you want to tackle that one?
I'd be happy to. What a compassionate question. So I would say being support to them, which I think involves one, showing them unconditional regard, that, whatever that person is experiencing, that you accept it about them. Perhaps asking open-ended questions. So rather than, how are you today? Questions that would be like, what do you think is going on right now that you're feeling this way? How can I help you through this? Letting them know that what they're experiencing is normal, that they're not a bad person because they're depressed or anxious. Maybe it's just sitting with them. Sometimes it's just sitting with somebody who's down, and being in close proximity and listening to them is enough.
Very good. Thank you, Greta.
And I might add just one thing for, it's nothing, sometimes it's not something that I can do something about, they will feel this, and there's nothing, I can't snap my fingers and stop this feeling from happening. And I think often our intentions are good, but our actions are actually kind of harmful. So, just like Greta said, sometimes they just need time or space, or just to know we support them, and then to kind of let them be. And when we are busy around them and try to give them things or try to do things to make them feel better, it can be kind of overwhelming, and it can be frustrating, and it can be irritating. And then also, on the end of the other person, in that mindset, you might think, why isn't this working? And why aren't you appreciating this effort I'm putting in? And so it can really put a strain on both sides. But to understand that sometimes there's not something we can do at that moment to make it better, and you just kind of have to weather it and just be there. And sometimes being there is not being physically like in there, but kind of like say, I'm going to be in the next room. Let me know if you need something, and yeah, we'll get through this kind of thing. So it's once again, it's so individualized, and I think having a mediated conversation with someone like Greta and myself or other mental health professionals, it's so important to help families understand like what exactly they're going through, and like what they might need. It's so important just to back up and think about that.
I know that we're running out of time. There was a couple additional questions in the chat box. What I'd ask is, Ryan, could you please put our email address in the chat box? And anybody who has questions, including the few that are left over in the chat box, please send them to us, and we will make sure that they are forwarded to the appropriate resources for an answer. So if you have any questions still, if you were in the chat box or you think of anything even after this is over with, please use the chat box or use our email address to send us the questions, and we'll get it to the right resources. Before we end, we also want to give an opportunity for some local organizations to share resources and programs for students and families in Vista Unified. And so first, I'd like to introduce Linda Lee Garraby from the San Diego County Office of Education Friday Night Live program. She's been helping us behind the scenes tonight, and she also has resources and programs to share.
Thank you for that introduction, Erin. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Lee Garibay, and I work with the Friday Night Live program with the San Diego County Office of Education. Friday Night Live is a California statewide before and after school program that is free to implement. We have a high school program called Friday Night Live, a middle school program called Club Live, FNL Kids, which is 3rd grade to 5th grade, and FNL Mentoring, which is cross-age mentoring between middle school and high school students. A little bit of a history around Friday Night Live. It was first developed in 1984 in Sacramento to reduce injuries and fatalities caused by teen impaired driving. A group of high school youth noticed more fatalities on Friday nights due to underage drinking and driving, which motivated them to create this program. And that's where our name comes from. It's all about being alive on Friday nights. Originally, our program focused on anti-alcohol, tobacco, and other drug prevention messages, and then it shifted to youth development and building youth competency to become successful adults. So instead of focusing on the problems, we want to build up young people's skills so that they can navigate through problems and issues that they might face and make the correct and healthy decision. We have our youth participate in activities that focus on capacity building and leadership skills, but what we want to achieve is to make sure that they have a safe environment, they have opportunities for community engagement, leadership, and advocacy, building caring and meaningful relationships, and they have opportunities to engage in interesting and relevant skill building. We also have events that are open to all youth in San Diego. For instance, this year we are hosting a free virtual leadership conference for middle school and high school youth. There will be leadership workshops, awesome guest speakers around youth voice. DEA agents will be coming to talk about drug trafficking and prevention. We also have the County Office of Education that will be presenting on ways you can reduce stress and anxiety, like practicing mindfulness and breathing techniques. And other fun activities like virtual escape rooms and trivia. We've also done cooking classes, art classes, and yoga classes in the past as well. So if you have any questions about the program, please feel free to reach out to me. I will put our website and my email in the chat box. Thank you all for letting me join you today and sharing about Friday Night Live.
Thank you very much. And next, Vista Community Clinic has several programs to help support youth. We have Jessica with REACH, Karina with Tobacco Control Stay Woke, Erica Leary with NCPC's Rancho Buena Vista Policy Club. Any one of you would like to speak?
Yes, I can go. That's my slide. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Garcia. I am the program manager for the Youth Development Department with Vista Community Clinic. And one of our programs that we serve is Project Reach. We have a location at Rancho Buena Vista High School. So it's a free after-school program serving the students that attend that high school. The program focuses on, it's a prevention program. So we focus on prevention on gang violence, substance use, and teen pregnancy, which also include workshops for the parents on all those topics. Our main objective is to provide academic assistance for the students, empower the youth so that they can become leaders within their communities. Our program has changed a bit because of COVID. So when in-school session is running, we're allowed to go inside campus. We have a classroom 702. It's close to the football field. And we're open Monday through Friday from 2:45, so right after school till 6 p.m. It's a safe space for students to complete their educational requirements. We do have a smaller group because of COVID. We want to make sure that everyone's spaced out and has the proper social distance. But we do have an academic tutor to help the students with any missing assignments, projects, or any current homework that they have. And we do offer academic materials, so educational materials if they need any supplies for school. We offer free meals, and then we also have produce that we bring in that students can take home, as well as hygiene items. And because when school is closed, we are supporting the students through their virtual learning. So right now we are running virtual programming. Our virtual programming is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We decided to change that a bit because we know students are in front of the computer the whole day. So we wanted to give them a little bit of extra time. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are open our Zoom from 3 to 4:30, and we're helping students with any homework. We do activities, so we're still doing enrichment activities and prevention curriculums. Aside from those dates, if any of the students need any help with any of their homework, we're able to support them. They can just message us and we can open a Zoom meeting for them. And right now, we're still able to support the families with any produce drop-offs. So if any of them need any produce or any hygiene items, we can drop it off to their house. So if you have any questions, my name is Jessica. I can write my email on the chat box, but we also have here on the screen our extension number and our cell phone number for our site program. Thank you all.
Very good. Karina?
Hello, everyone. My name is Karina Esquivel. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for Vista Community Clinic's Tobacco Control Program, but I'm also the club facilitator for Stay Woke, which stands for Spreading Tobacco Control Advocacy Through Youth. Together, we share or we educate the youth and their peers in the community about the dangers that vaping has among them. We can provide for the students community service hours and different opportunities where they can add to their resume, like leadership skills, public speaking, trainings, and things like that. We also have the honor of being partnered with FNL. So thank you, Linda. She always helps us out. And thank you all the other FNL team. I'm sorry I don't know you all personally, but we definitely appreciate every help that all the help you offer our club. But with that being said, we are a club based out of Vista High School for high school students. So if you are a parent who has a high school student that goes to Vista, or maybe a middle schooler that's going to enter high school soon, just keep us on your radar. I will share my email in case anybody wants to get in contact with me. Thank you.
Very good. Erica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And in the interest of time, I will just say ditto to Karina and Jessica. We have similar opportunities at Rancho Buena Vista through the Public Policy Club that's co-facilitated by my husband, who's a teacher there, Mr. Leary. So if you know students at Rancho Buena Vista interested in public policy, I'm going to put my contact info in the chat so we can get right into drawing some lucky winners tonight.
Very good. Thank you for the segue. So one last thing is to draw some lucky winners on our virtual spinning wheel. I'm going to turn things over to Ryan Fletcher.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I have everyone's names here that filled out the survey. I'm going to go ahead and make it full screen. We're going to pick 3 winners tonight. So I will start with the first one. All right. Winner number 2. And last but not least, so thank you all for participating in our survey.
Very good. Winners will be contacted from the contact info provided in the survey, and they will be sent a $10 Target gift card. Again, feel free to email us if you have any questions. Reach out to any of the people who have put their contact information in the chat. And thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. Please have a good and safe night.